Let's just jump right into this explainer because today we're looking at the actual on-the-ground business reality of board manufacturing. Specifically, we're zeroing in on Jodicide HPA adhesive. And honestly, this is about how you can take what is usually a massive, expensive headache, environmental compliance, and totally flip it into a strategic, highly profitable cost advantage. Look, if you're running a plant right now, you already know the pressure is on from literally every angle.
So let me just start off by asking you a really direct question about your supply chain, and frankly, about those hidden costs that are just quietly eating away at your margins right now. Are you still paying completely exorbitant international freight rates just to ship water across the ocean? Seriously, think about it, because if you're shipping traditional liquid adhesives, that is exactly what you are doing.
And this perfectly sets up the immediate squeeze the industry is facing right now. On one hand, you've got these rapidly tightening global regulations, like the upcoming 2026 EU REACH mandates. They're dropping formaldehyde limits to a microscopic 0.05 ppm. Plus, you've got incredibly strict traceability laws popping up in massive export hubs like Vietnam. On the other hand, you have the total dead end of traditional urea formaldehyde or UF adhesives. Sticking with UF right now is basically just playing roulette with your compliance. You're taking on this huge risk of having your entire export cargo rejected at the port.
So, here's our quick roadmap for today's explainer. We're going to cover the industry reshuffle and survival crisis, the cost advantages of dimensional strikes, upgrading your production line with zero risk, building a compliance moat with authoritative testing, and finally, using this as a commercial weapon for your global supply chain.
All right, kicking things off with Section 1, Industry Reshuffle, the squeeze on board manufacturers. Let's get into it.
Look, if your lines are still running on UF glue, your margins are just getting hammered from both ends. You're dealing with surging raw material prices for urea, volatile skyrocketing international freight, and on top of that, these incredibly aggressive new formaldehyde bans. When those 2026 EU REACH limits actually kick in, your traditional E1 or E2 grade resins won't just be less competitive, they will be completely locked out of high-value markets. You are staring down the very real, very expensive risk of massive cargo rejections.
Moving right along to Section 2, Cost Advantage via Dimensional Strike. This is really the ROI revelation of HPA powder.
Okay, if you only remember one thing today, make it this ratio, 1 to 5. 1 part HPA powder mixed with 5 parts water yields a whopping 6 parts of active, ready-to-use liquid glue. This ultra-high concentration completely changes the game for your purchasing logic. You are no longer paying to move water around, you're buying pure, concentrated performance.
Let's actually break down how that ratio hits your bottom line. Now, at first glance, the initial price per ton of HPA powder might look basically the same, maybe slightly higher than UF. But because of that 1 to 5 conversion rate, your actual usable liquid glue cost absolutely plummets to roughly 1,400 R&D per ton. When you compare that to the 2,500 to 4,000 RMB you're used to dropping on traditional liquid UF, you're looking at a massive 35% to 50% overall cost reduction for downstream users. And check out that bottom row. HPA needs absolutely zero of those expensive formaldehyde scavenger chemicals. So, boom, those hidden compliance costs are just entirely wiped off your ledger.
Next up, Section 3, Zero Risk Production Line Upgrade. We're talking seamless integration with your existing equipment.
Now, I know what you're thinking. Upgrades mean downtime, right? Actually, no. The operational reality here is shockingly simple. You do not need to pause production to rebuild your line, at all. It takes about 15 minutes of standard, room temperature mixing to prep this adhesive. You just add standard water, pour in the HPA powder, give it a quick 8-minute stir until it thickens up, and then blend in some industrial flour for 5 minutes. That is literally it. It's the definition of a zero-threshold upgrade.
And the data here just confirms what every plant manager wants to hear. Zero new capital expenditure. None. Your current industry standard mixing tanks, your cold presses, your hot presses, the exact same stuff you're already using for UF, are 100% perfectly equipped to handle HPA. It is a true drop-in replacement. No new boiler heating required, no crazy complex chemical engineering on site, you just swap it in.
But what's really fascinating here is how this actually boosts your yield rates. The process parameters are completely standard, veneer moisture under 20% and hot press temps over 110 degrees Celsius. But here's the kicker. This bio-based formula has a built-in grade 0 nano anti-mold technology. If you export furniture to really hot, humid tropical markets, think Southeast Asia or Africa, you know mold is your absolute biggest enemy.
Having this built-in protection is a total lifesaver. It practically eliminates the risk of rejected, moldy shipments, which directly protects your final yield rates.
All right, moving to Section 4, Authoritative Testing and Compliance Moat. Let's look at how to build ultimate trust using some hard data.
Look, in this industry, literally everyone claims to be low aldehyde, right? But we are not talking about empty marketing fluff today. We're looking at authoritative third-party validation. What you're seeing here is the TÜV Rheinland test report header for Genadisci HPA. This proves it stands up to the absolute strictest global testing protocols out there.
And the testing data backs up the reality. Formaldehyde is literally not detected. You see, traditional UF glues suffer from this nightmare called secondary release. Basically, even if you cram in enough scavengers to pass a test today, heat and humidity can cause that board to release formaldehyde weeks later. That leads to disastrous, expensive returns. But because HPA is made from nano-modified starch and polysaccharides, not petrochemicals, there is zero added formaldehyde from the very source. You can't release what isn't there in the first place.
So by adopting this, you're instantly building an absolute fortress of a compliance mode around your business. Just look at this coverage. It easily clears China's ultra-strict ENF standard. It guarantees absolute compliance for US CARB P2 and NAF. It meets Japan's highest 4-star standard, and it totally cruises past those impending 2026 EU REACH regulations. You're not just scraping by on tests here, you are entirely future-proofing your entire catalog.
And finally, Section 5, Commercial Weapon for Global Supply Chain. Let's talk strategic logistics and global expansion.
This brings us right back to that question I hit you with at the very beginning. On the left, you've got these massive container ships. On the right, dry bags of Genadisci HPA powder. By shipping a pure, highly concentrated powder instead of a heavy, totally waterlogged liquid resin, you instantly cut out the completely absurd practice of paying international sea freight rates just to move water around the globe. It just makes sense.
When you make this switch, you're gaining a massive 300% increase in transport efficiency. And since it's a stable, bio-based powder, it gets categorized as non-restricted, SGS-certified cargo. That means no nightmare customs delays and no massive stacks of hazardous material paperwork. Plus, you lock in a 12-month shelf life. Try doing that with liquid UF glue without it spoiling, right? This means your factory can confidently execute strategic, bulk stockpiling without constantly sweating over your inventory going bad.
The global adhesive market is experiencing a paradigm shift from price-driven to value and compliance-driven. You know, that quote just perfectly nails our key takeaway for today. The entire market is fundamentally shifting. Transitioning to HPA isn't just some reluctant nod to environmental mandates. By slashing your liquid glue costs by up to 50%, requiring absolutely zero new CapEx, and securing guaranteed global compliance, switching to HPA is just a highly profitable, practically risk-free business strategy that directly shields your bottom line.
So I'm going to leave you with this final thought to chew on. As those 2026 global regulations aggressively tighten and the green elimination round really kicks into high gear, what is your strategy going to be? Are you going to make the seamless switch to HPA, protect your margins, and just effortlessly access premium global markets? Or are you going to cling to outdated UF glue and literally watch your competitors scoop up your orders? The business case here is crystal clear. The choice is yours. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you next time.